Welcome to Clear the Air with me, Angela Lim, medical doctor and co-founder of ClearHead, an innovative employee wellbeing platform. Clear the Air is a podcast covering those experiences in your life or questions you have that you feel too vulnerable to share with those around you, such as, why do I feel so lonely? And what can I do to feel happier? We get real and raw on these existential questions on mental health and well-being that's puzzled humans for millennia, sharing the science behind what you're experiencing and the answers behind those questions. It's so much of a talk today around what it means to be confident, to not have imposter syndrome, and really kind of connect to who we are as individuals as the world gets more and more uncertain and AI is apparently going to replace us all. And I'm so excited to share together with us the guest Marco Sanders, who is a German psychologist and author who does very deep psychological coaching with more than 400 people worldwide on a one-to-one setting. He is prolific at creating mental well-being content on YouTube. That's how I learned about him. I had watched some of his content, which has been really great. He has more than almost 70,000 followers and millions of views on his videos. He is primarily focused on entrepreneurs and business owners, but really a lot of his concepts affect everyone. And so whether it's low self-esteem, whether it's low confidence, or you're having some form of insecurity that you're trying to work through, I think today's session will be great for you to kind of explore that with us. So Marco is convinced that every human being has an innate tendency to grow and become psychologically healthy, and the task of a psychologist like him is to help remove the roadblocks to achieving that self-actualization. And with that, I'm really excited to welcome Marco.
Hey, Angela, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Wonderful. Well, Marco, before we kick off, maybe you can share with us a little bit about how you got started. What made you become a psychologist and creating content on YouTube and coaching people all over the world?
Yeah, that's a good question. When people ask me that, I don't have a inspiring story when I suddenly figured it out. I think it was really a slow process over years where I noticed, okay, maybe I want to do psychology. And actually, I remember I did a work and travel year in New Zealand where I just worked on lettuce and broccoli farm when I was 19 for a year. And that's where I noticed I think I want to do psychology. And I'm just curious about learning how people work, how do they feel, why they act the way they act. And that's why I studied it. And then early on, I had a lot of creativity. And in my mind, I wanted to do something. And I noticed I'm just a guy doing his bachelor. Nobody listens to me, but everybody can start a YouTube channel. So then I just started doing YouTube. And I'm doing this now since, I think, 6 years or so. And it's been a journey. And it's been a lovely ride to share what I'm learning. And then to also start coaching people all over the world. Very exciting. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing your wisdom. I'm sure many of the people listening today will also benefit from it. Well, let's kick off with the first part of the conversation, which is self-esteem and confidence the same thing? And if not, maybe you could share with us how would you differentiate them?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit confusing because confidence and self-esteem seems to overlap a lot. If we go into the definition, there is a slight difference. So confidence is more focused on the belief in your ability. So I feel like, for example, I can give a presentation because I'm a professor and I'm doing this already for 20 years and I've done it for 20 years. So confidence often also comes with routine, doing something over and over again. I believe that I can do it. I have those abilities. Self-esteem is a little different. Self-esteem is more focused on how much do I like myself and how much do I value myself. And actually, Abraham Maslow is one of my favorite psychologists. He came up with this pyramid of needs, and he talked about self-esteem, and he distinguished even self-esteem into two parts. There is the self part, so how much do I feel like I genuinely accomplish things in life and I authentically grow? And there is even the other part of how great of relationships do I have and the people around me, how much do they value me? So this other part that a lot of people try to ignore, like, no, I need to be confident on my own. I don't care what other people think. That's actually also a legit part of self-esteem. And all in all, this is about how much do I like myself and how much do I value myself, versus confidence, which is more just about the ability and the belief that I have the ability. Yeah. And it's a little bit overlapping, of course. If I believe I can do something, I'm great at something, my self-esteem raises, but there's a little bit of a distinguishment. And to be honest, I am myself not yet fully happy with this definition. And psychology is just around 100 years old. And I think over the next decades, and I hope we come up with even a clearer and better understanding of self-esteem and confidence and how this works and intermingles. But I'm happy to share what psychologists figured out the last 100 years already today.
Well, if we could unpack 100 years of worth of content in the
Yeah.
next hour, I would be pretty happy with that. Okay, well, so what you're sort of saying is that actually, if I do something regularly and I practice on it, I actually will build my confidence, and that's something that is actually very actionable for me to do. So if I want to be more confident at public speaking, I just need to kind of keep doing it, even if I kind of basically suck the first time I did it, and until I get to a point where actually this is becoming pretty familiar. But then when you talk about self-esteem, you talk about how it's almost in one sense one's relationship with oneself, but also one's relationship with others. And so can we, I guess, build self-esteem without other people's opinion of us? And what I mean by that is, I grew up in Asia, and there is so much that is associated with what job do you have, what car are you driving, what home do you have you bought, and so it'd be good to understand from your perspective, in today's society where we're constantly having to keep up with others, and we're using social media as a false sense of benchmarking our success in life. How do we kind of make sure we build healthy self-esteem that's not driven by other people's extrinsic validation, and actually really coming back to what will matter to us and what will allow us long-term, more sustainable happiness?
Yeah, I think that's the golden question of self-esteem. How to make ourselves a bit more independent of everybody else. Especially in Asia, as you said, there's this huge social pressure as well. First of all, I don't need to say, our brain is a product of millions of years of evolution, and humans are not made to live on their own. We've always been in tribes, and then thinking about, hey, if I'm going to be rude, they're not going to like me, maybe they're going to kick me out of the tribe, I have to survive on my own, that's probably not going to work, so I'm probably going to die. So it is important what other people think of you, and if you fully don't care about it, you're basically a narcissist or a psychopath. So you want it to a degree care of other people. And even also Abraham Maslow said, it doesn't matter how much you're developed, how self-actualized you are, you're not immune against the opinions of people that you really care about. So that's to a degree important to know. But I get your point, if people overly worry about others, then it becomes a little bit unhealthy and you overly worry what other people think of you. And what's interesting is, even here in Western society in Europe, I have a lot of clients where they also have the self-esteem very much based on others, and they do a lot of comparison. And when we go back into the childhood, what we often notice is that their parents have been overly critical and always judging, and they always noticed, I need to more focus my attention not inwards of what I want, but more outwards, check whether my parents still like it, whether other people still like it, because if not, then they maybe not gonna love me or whatever. So it's basically been a survival strategy. And then over the years, people are adulting and then still focus on the outside and what do other people think and want. And then, for example, the strategy kicks in of, oh, maybe I just need a good car. Maybe I just need a prestigious job. Maybe I just need to be successful. And all they're trying to do is actually get recognition of others and actually feel like I am good enough. That's what they want. And though it's often a strategy that is not really working because you're just in this hamster wheel running faster and faster until you're maybe even having a burnout. And I think a crucial point to build this healthy self-esteem is to understand that this strategy is probably not working. And the strategy of, for example, getting a nice car or a nice job what is behind? That's the core question. And behind that is probably I want recognition. And what is behind recognition? If you look even deeper, it is probably just love. I just want to be loved. I just want to feel like I'm fine and people actually appreciate me the way I am. And then the question is a nice car making actually people love me? Probably not. Probably even some people will hate me for that because they're jealous and then they get the exact opposite they actually wanted to. And I think that's an important point.
Well, let's explore that a little bit, because really what you're saying here is that the fundamental roots to healthy self-esteem fundamentally boils down to wanting to get to a point where I can look myself in the mirror and I can say I am enough. I am enough without my job title. I am enough without my fancy car. Um, and that everything that we've done and chased extrinsically is to find love, whether from others, but if we can start with finding love and giving love from ourselves, that's really important. You talk a lot about obviously the the unsuccessful strategies that we chase to be happy and fulfilled, and probably not lonely. So maybe if we could share a little bit about what are the strategies that works, that would be really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. So a lot of clients I noticed who come to me then are just trying to just steer their thought in a different direction. You know, I feel like I'm unhappy or I'm having a low self-esteem. Let's just say I'm happy. I'm happy. I just pretend I'm having a high self-esteem. And the problem with this strategy is that this is basically toxic positivity. You're just trying to tell yourself a story that you don't really believe yet. And then you often feel actually like you're faking something. And then if people start liking you, you feel like a fake and they don't truly like you. And then this also becomes all a problem. So a couple of strategies, and I always like talking with people one-on-one because then we can figure out what is actually helpful for you. If I would answer this on a big picture level, I would like to go back to the definition of self-esteem. So there's this self part, and the self part, again, is responsible for you genuinely accomplishing and authentically growing. And authentic growth means that you're doing something that you truly value. You feel like, yes, this job is meaningful. I like that. I like those people. I like working here. This is according to my really values. And working towards that, going in this direction, doing the type of things that you like, and really getting to know yourself a bit more. What do I want? Not what others want, but what do I want? And let me do that. And let me see that I'm getting better. Even with people who tend to be depressed, sometimes what really helps is to just give them social skills, learn with them how to connect with others, build connections, and actually learning social skills and how to communicate helps people to feel more connected and get out of depression. That's sometimes also helpful. So basically improve with communicating and also with what you truly like and go for that. The other part is the part of self-esteem which is connected to what other people want and how other people like you and how you like the relationships and how you perceive those relationships. So here I guess it's very simple and very this generic self-help advice, but surround yourself with the right people. If there are some people that are toxic for you, or afterwards when you socialize you feel like, yeah, I just kind of filled my time but that's it, those are probably not the right people you should hang around with. Hang around with the people you feel like you have a genuine connection, you feel like they actually love you, you love them, and that's how you also learn, hey, I am actually love worthy. I'm not just constantly getting criticized or people are not constantly making jokes about me because I'm hanging around with the people that I actually like, that like me as well, and I feel I am valuable, and this strengthens my belief and my feeling of, yes, I am worthy and I'm actually having a healthy self-esteem. Yeah, those are two broad strategies.
Those are very practical things that we can do, right? So if you like playing chess, and you feel, going through school that was too geeky, and but actually that's what you love, and you hid that part of yourself. I think a lot of that personal growth that you talked about is actually getting to a point where you can actually unashamedly say, hey, for whatever weird reason, I just really like this thing. I want to do more of it, and I want to spend time with people who like doing this with me. And I think a lot of that journey as we get older and when we start to index less about what other people think about us, is to get into that point where we can start doing more of what we actually like. And as we do that, we meet more of those people that genuinely enjoy spending time with us, and then we build that perspective that we are actually likable, as you said, and that we are enough as we are. And I think that sometimes there is this misunderstanding that actually, um, that that's not how you get to being confident and self-esteem. That what gets you there is if you're rich, if you're famous, if you lots of so-called public adoration of celebrity. And we see that again as we sort of see with some of the younger generation. A lot of the way they use social media is a way of seeking as much external validation as possible. How many followers do I have? And so you've worked with some very successful entrepreneurs who, like you said, make millions of dollars, and they still have the same issues that the everyday employee might have around feeling confident at work and feeling good about themselves. Maybe can you share a little bit about what you've learned working with some of these clients, and what sort of the universal challenges that we all face, regardless of whether we're rich and famous or not?
Yeah, I think a lot of those people have put all their eggs in one basket and they thought, okay, let's just run the business. Let's just make it successful. Let's just work on this 80 hours a week. Let's just go all out. And then when you have all that, when you have the money, when you have the successful business and you actually rationally think this is finally proof that I made it and I'm good enough, though you notice, as we said in the beginning, it is the wrong strategy because all you want is love, but now you have a couple of lawsuits because you're so successful and other companies are trying to sue you and whatever. That's like business, that's how it works. And you feel like, hey, nobody like really just gives me all the love that I want. I'm just having a business. And the problem is if you put all the basket into this bet, being successful is making me happy, and then you notice that's not true, then you feel helpless. You feel like I did all I thought I should, but I'm not there yet. And then this term learned helplessness kicks in from psychology. That you feel like you don't have any other strategy, you don't know what to do, but you're miserable, but you did all you thought you could. And this term learned helplessness is actually connected to depression. People who are depressed have this feeling of I'm helpless. I've been out with people, I still feel shitty. I've done all that, I still don't feel better. I don't know what to do. And this is also making you unmotivated. And this is often what those people face. They face basically an existential crisis of this is my life, but I learned it's not helpful, but I don't know what else to do. And then you're fully confused. You're not motivated to keep going that way as you did the last years, but you also don't know what else to do. And what happens then is we start working together, and then we basically understand what's next and how can we shift your values, because you valued success and individuality and business and money a lot. And the question is it now time to reevaluate your life, to maybe reprioritize what becomes more important, what else could you try, and how actually do you want to continue? And then a common pattern of change here is that you care more about others. You even change a little bit up your business in a way where you feel like it's not just me being successful. Actually, I do something good for the world. Actually, I do something good for my employees and for the business, which, by the way, makes the business even more successful by actually starting to really care about others and not just you being successful. And letting more love in your life. Those people also often have shitty childhoods because their parents have been narcissists, overly critical, and gave them the feeling they're never good enough. So then as a child, you learn, damn, I just need to be good enough. If I'm perfect, maybe then I'll finally get the love. So they run. That's why they became so successful. Great. But at this point, the strategy doesn't work anymore. We need to learn something else. And that's what we're doing. We look often into their childhood, what happened there, worked out some trauma, which is just a Greek word, which means wound. It's an emotional wound. Pretty much everybody has a trauma in their life. And then also reevaluate. What do I prefer and what do I value really nowadays? And then we make this shift.
I mean, it keeps coming back down to people taking the time to pause and just say, am I climbing up a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall? And actually how do let's if we simulate this a little bit, Marco. I've come to you, and I realized that I've spent my whole life chasing things that actually uh, I I think will give me love, and but actually doesn't. So how do you help people take the first exercise around figuring out what actually are the things that they value? So yeah, what are there common questions that you ask your clients when they first come to you to help them figure out whether they are actually doing the things that they care about rather than what they think other people want them to do?
Yeah, let me think. So, the one thing that you said, actually, I love this quote: climbing up a ladder and then noticing you leaned it against the wrong wall. I think to a degree it's right. In this aspect, though, I'm really also empathizing that the strategy and what they did the last years, they didn't do that for nothing. I think this was a very important lesson that they learned and they had to learn. Very important phase. It's not wrong. Just because they don't value this nowadays anymore doesn't mean that they actually authentically valued running their own business, being self-employed, becoming successful. And also what they did at this point, having this business and also making a little bit more money, is very helpful to now dive into the new phase of life. Those are valuable resources that they have, experience and money that they made. So that's been very important. And I also often mention this in those coaching sessions, that this is important what you did, and now it's something else. So what got you here is not going to bring you over there. That's important. Also, in the beginning, what we spend a lot of time with is simply asking ourselves, what do you want? So let's imagine we're working together now for 2 months. And at the end of those 2 months, you said, Marco, this was amazing. What needs to happen in those 2 months that you're saying this was great? What do we need to do? What's the goal? I think that's a very important thing. Is also in coaching, coaches often feel pressure and be like, yes, I need to come up with a solution. So let's just talk solutions. But we first of all need to understand a little bit what is going on. What do you want? And even when you ask about exercises, I often let people draw out a so-called genogram, where they simply draw out their parents, their grandma, their family, and then we talk about how they grew up. How did your mother raise you? How did your father raise you? We talk about that. And then if we notice, oh, there, you have a conflict with your father because he's a narcissist, you've never been good enough, then we talk a little bit more about that. Often people cry, a lot of tears come out, a lot of anger suddenly. In the beginning they say, that's just my dad, he just is like that. That's the way he is. And then you notice, no, actually I felt hurt. Then you feel anger, and all those emotions, those suddenly come out. And this is also often something we talk about, which is very helpful to let go of this and feel more compassionate to yourself.
One of the things that you've talked about is in many ways accepting, right? Like there's no point beating yourself up for the choices you have made, but actually let's just accept that we are where we are now. There are learnings that comes from it, and but now we recognize that we need something more, and we're ready for that next chapter of our lives, which requires us to potentially do different things, surround ourselves with different people, ask different questions of ourselves, of how we want to prioritize our time and our effort. And but all of that sounds, I don't know, it sounds really hard. It sounds like I have to invest and make a lot of changes. Are there simple things that I can start with that get me ready to even be on this journey? Are there regular things that I could? You talked about, actually, your book is on building habits. Are there habits that I can build that gets me ready to take this big piece of work that I feel like I'm going to, in some ways change my life, most likely for the better, but feels like a lot to invest in, and maybe I want to just start somewhere small. Maybe you can talk through what we can do from that perspective.
Emotions usually just want to be there. Except from anger. Anger still wants to do something, but other emotions usually just want to be there. So the first step really is awareness, becoming aware of your thoughts, becoming aware of your emotions, and noticing them. Even if you notice, oh, I'm criticizing myself now. Don't criticize yourself for criticizing yourself. Just notice it and be like, okay, I'm criticizing myself again. And also become aware of why this is. True, because My parents always criticized me. Now I'm criticizing myself to anticipate it and already change it so my parents won't criticize me. So it was a helpful strategy to protect me from criticism, so I criticize myself first. That's why I'm overly criticizing. Okay, and by understanding why things are, you often become more compassionate and see it as it is, and then you can start working. And this process is already 50% really. If you notice why this is and that it is, you're doing really fine. So journaling, going for a walk on your own, even though it feels like there's nothingness, just go for a walk without listening to a podcast. Just leave some space and emptiness and see what's coming up. Those are practical points. And this reflection process is very helpful. And out of this process, usually you then notice what you should do different. I should do more of this. I should connect to more people. I should talk to this person. I should cut this relationship or have a conversation at least. And then the action steps are here.
And actually, if you don't know if you like yourself or not, the simplest thing you can do is actually take a walk by yourself. Don't take your phone with you. Like literally go take a walk out in nature. Have no distractions but you and your thoughts. And then kind of after an hour, kind of see did you enjoy that time, or were you spending the whole time wishing someone else was there, or that you could have your phone to distract you. And I think a large part of what it means to have a healthy self-esteem is to actually be very comfortable to be in your own company, and this is a good test to do that. And as Marco said, it gives you the space as well to kind of help you figure out what is it that's actually at the back of your mind, that it was easy to watch all the Netflix and go on Instagram and bury yourself in emails that you never allow yourself to process. But giving yourself the space actually allows the real things that you're thinking about, that you're probably not ready to unpack, to surface and then explore. That sounds good. I think in the context of, we've kind of almost in some ways assumed that someone's gotten to that point where they know that, that they're ready for that next chapter of their life, that they're unhappy with what was and they want something new. But what are the questions you ask yourself when you actually don't know what you want? You just feel like something's not right, or maybe you just feel unmotivated at work or at school, or you don't even know what is your dreams, and because you're just so busy with the day-to-day. Can you share around what are the questions or things people need to do in that situation?
Because it can also make you feel quite helpless sitting in your room asking yourself, what do I want? That's such a big, broad question that nobody can really grasp, and then you sit there and you feel stupid for not knowing what you want. But it's like somebody asking you, hey, tell me a story. And you're like, I mean, what kind of story? I cannot think about any story if you ask me tell me a story. But if you tell me, hey, tell me a story from you being in 5th grade in high school with your teacher, then suddenly you're like, yeah, there was actually this moment when I gave this presentation and he said this and this and that. Then you suddenly can come up with answers. And it's just a more specific niche question. And I think that's exactly the process with figuring out who you are and what you want, to not just ask yourself, what do I want? And actually go a little deeper and ask yourself a bit more specific questions. For example, what did I enjoy when I was like 5 to 10 years old? What did I enjoy when I was like 10 to 15? What did I enjoy when I was studying or when I started working? What did I enjoy back then? Okay. Or what have been moments in life when I had this flow state where I forgot about time and space and I was just fully in the project? I remember in 5th grade in high school, I prepared this presentation. I was so in the flow. Awesome. I love presentations. Maybe I should start a YouTube channel. Oh, that's, for example, an example from my life. So ask yourself a couple of deeper questions, and you being confused to not knowing what you want, if you ask yourself the question, what do I want? That's normal. That makes sense. I actually, even with my clients, I have a little program where they run through 8 questions to figure out their values. So we don't just sit down and be like, what are your values? No, there's like 8 questions hitting it from different angles to then come up with a custom list. Because if you just sit there, what are my values? You're also overwhelmed. You don't know what to do. You feel disencouraged. You feel helpless. You feel unmotivated. and that's not going to helpful. That's not going to help you for the process of moving forward. The first question actually is a very broad question. It's just simply, what do I value the most in life? That's the broadest question, yes, but it also helps people to just catch the first ideas they have that are very close by. That's the very broad question. And then we move onward to more specific questions. I think the second question is, if you imagine you would live for 100 years, but you could live all over again, and you have all the success and money, like you'll be fine. How would you design your life? That's the second question. Still rather broad, but then we go more and more specific. And by then going in those specific areas and hitting it from different angles, and then there is some overlap in the answers that you have, then you can probably be certain there is probably some truth to that.
And of course, there's a tool that Clearhead has built that helps you figure out what are your values and how can you better align what you're doing in your life to that. It is fundamentally a very core operating system. If you know and deeply understand your values, you actually will feel less out of control of your life, because you actually can understand what are both your conscious and unconscious behaviors, and you can mitigate that, and then you can actually be very deliberate about seeking more of the things in your life, the people in your life that fulfills that value, and you will feel this sense of control and autonomy in the context that actually a lot of life is not controllable, and that makes the journey a little bit more fun. And it sounds good in the sense that we can do all these things, right? But tell me the truth. How long does it actually take before you start to see positive changes in your self-esteem and your confidence by asking those questions, by, surrounding yourself with the people that you want to be around? Is it, can I see results in a week? Can I see results in a month? How long will it take?
So those classical questions, especially when I work with business owners, that are very like, what's the next point? We just worked on stuff and we just cried a bit. What's next? What's the next step? And how much does it take? Give me an 8-week plan. That's a bit difficult. Also, even so, Abraham Maslow, the psychologist, he interviewed thousands of people. He thought, okay, maybe those are even self-actualized, and generally interviewed a lot of people. And he said even the people who are self-actualized once in a while experience a blow to their self-esteem. So don't expect you at some point, okay, I got it handled, the self-esteem. Next level unleashed. Let's work on the next thing. I don't need to worry about the other thing anymore. That's always part of it. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. But working on that within a couple of weeks, I'm sure you can experience some change, but it's a process, not a goal. It's a year-long process. And then when you handle the one thing, the next thing happens. For example, for me, I barely give podcasts. I was like, oh, I'm a bit excited. Like, how is this going to work out? I'm not so often like live with a lot of people. I shoot YouTube videos and I have one-on-one coaching sessions, but like live with like 77 people, that's new to me. I'm a bit excited. Not saying that my self-esteem is low, but I'm excited and nervous, and that's part of it, and that's okay. Even though I feel like I'm having a decent self-esteem, can still be excited and nervous.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's the fact that like I know one of your videos had like 5 million views already, and here you are like excited about 77 people tuning to you live. So and that's the thing, isn't it? It's like every time you can hit a peak in life, but how can you keep finding new peaks to be excited about, so that you don't feel that you've actually become complacent and that life has kind of become very mundane? It's how do you find ways in which to be a learner again and to start again and say, okay, now 77, tomorrow 150, and next time 5 million. And actually, the truth is that these things actually, this is a lifelong journey. And so if we are talking and making it sound like, oh, you ask a few questions, you make a few behavior change, and then suddenly you will love yourself and you will have great self-esteem and confidence, then we are setting you up for failure. This is an ongoing journey, and that's the beauty of it, is that we will always find new peaks to climb, and to find joy in the journey is really important. We've touched a little bit a few times on this whole thing around self-actualization. Maybe you should actually define what is self-actualization, because I think that's the holy grail that most people don't even realize, that that's the final peak of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
So I'm not sure how many people know the hierarchy of needs. That's just a basic theory. A lot of people learn about this in high school here in Germany, at least. And it basically is a motivational hierarchy and shows what do you strive for. And when you, for example, the lower bottom, that's the physiological need. And if you have enough food and water and sleep, you then think about the next need, which is safety. And when you feel safe, you have a shelter, you have a regular income, you then think about the next one, sense of belonging. I want to belong to people, to a group, feel connected. And then self-esteem kicks in. I want to feel not only like I'm belonging, I also feel like I'm worthy and I have a certain self-esteem. And when you are doing relatively fine with those four needs, then you go into the self-actualization stage. So the definition of self-actualizing is, first of all, you are fine with those lower needs. You have basically satisfied them pretty much. And only then you can even worry about self-actualization, which is about who am I? How do I want to express myself? And you go for that. Because if you're still worrying about what other people think about you, you're unsure, you don't really have a sense of who I am, and you're also afraid of being yourself. And only if you really feel, for example, a healthy self-esteem as well, then you can actually be yourself. But the definition of self-actualization is not just you being yourself and you do what you do. There are a couple of other aspects Abraham Maslow noticed while interviewing those people. They also perceive life a little different. For example, they don't experience jealousy when they talk to somebody else. Jealousy is more something you being a bit insecure, because you notice if somebody else is more successful, I am less successful. Does that mean I'm less worthy? And then people struggle with their self-esteem. But if you're fully having a healthy self-esteem, you're actualizing, you're actually fine with somebody else being even more successful. You even wish them well. You're even happy for them. You're even getting inspired. So being self-actualized also means that you perceive life a little bit different. There's no zero-sum game. You like giving. You also notice that a lot of paradoxes in your life that you thought before are black and white actually are the same. For example, being selfless and selfish. Self-actualizers notice when I'm most selfless, when I'm giving the most, actually I feel the best. It's actually the most selfish thing I can do is to help people, to give out content, and to provide the world with a purpose and with something that I think is valuable. That actually is most selfish, and not just looking on myself and see that I have enough money and whatever. And that goes on, and there are a lot of characteristics. Abraham Maslow, you can Google that. There are even 16 characteristics he came up with, even with humor. You know, people don't make a humor on the cost of others. They don't put others down. This is what people do with low self-esteem, because if you put others down, you appear higher. So you have, again, a higher self-esteem, which is but not based on a healthy self-esteem. Self-actualizers don't do this. They love to laugh about themselves, or even making a joke, which is though not at the cost of others. It's actually a very loving kind of humor. Yeah, and the list goes on and on. So you perceive life a bit different. You're feeling more full of love. You can be more yourself and actually express yourself more. That's self-actualization. And by the way, he even wrote an article. Nobody knows about that. Everybody knows this pyramid the way it is. He even wrote an article that he noticed after self-actualization is a new stage, which is self-transcendence. And this is more what also Buddhists call when they talk about enlightenment. This is basically self-transcendence here, and that's an interesting approach, by the way, that Maslow noticed. Hey, by fulfilling my desires, I move up and develop, and I can even self-transcend. Buddhists say, no, just sit down, meditate, let go of all the desires, you can self-transcend. Probably there's a truth to both, but it points towards the same direction of human development, which is also a little side note that I want to add here.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it, is that you kind of actually have, I always say, there's no point telling a homeless, hungry person that they need to self-actualize, because they need to start with the basics. But each level helps you have the capacity to unlock the one after that. And so if I'm understanding you correctly, then does that mean that if I have a good self esteem and it's a healthy self esteem, then I actually, one of the signs that I have unlocked my self esteem is that I become less jealous of people. I'm so confident and comfortable about who I am. I don't need to put other people down to make myself feel good about myself. What are the other signs that I have achieved a positive self esteem?
Yeah, that's actually an important point that you mentioned, this feeling of comparing myself with others. And there are basically two ways to feel like you're worthy or you are somebody. The one is that you actually imagine two little kids are building towers. And how do you build the highest tower? Either you're building your tower so great that it's taller than the others, or you just kick off the other tower and then yours appears higher, right? And a lot of people use this second strategy to just criticize people, judge people a lot, say, he's just this way or he's not great in this way. And then you put other people down, you make a joke about others, and then you appear better. Also, like if you just chat behind others people's backs in a negative way, it makes you feel so amazing because it seems like you're good and those are bad. And then you feel like you have the self-esteem, but it's very much based on an insecure state because you're just trying to be relatively better than others. And when you have a healthy self-esteem, you don't have that. You don't need others to be less successful or whatever. You're fine with that. You're totally fine. You're even inspired. You're grateful. You even wish others well. That's a big sign of having a healthy self-esteem. And having a healthy self-esteem also is a bit more independent of what other people think. You're still connected to, especially what important people in your life think about you, but you're not overly constantly thinking about what will other people think. It's not so embarrassing if something negative happens. And also you notice failure has nothing to do with you as a person. If I would, for example, now mess up here in this podcast, thinking now that I'm just a bad psychologist, this is what a lot of people doing that are low in their self-esteem. So if I do something wrong, I am wrong. Instead, if I mess something up, if I say something wrong, yes, I made a mistake here, but it's more on a behavioral level. I made a mistake, but that's it. It's not like I am not competent. So that's also a shift that people with a healthy self-esteem experience, that they are not instantly connecting everything to their entire persona. We can go the other way around. Narcissists, for example. Narcissists think they are the greatest and everybody else is a loser. But again, that's just based on an unhealthy self-esteem. They're just protecting it and have this huge barrier of I'm the greatest. But behind that, there's actually a lot of insecurity.
Yeah, well, let's explore that a little bit because it is in some ways a fine line to be considered confident versus arrogant. And I think that there are certain societies where, and New Zealand is one of them, where they have this saying called tall poppy syndrome, where you almost don't want to be a overachiever because people will cut you down because how dare you try to be better than everyone else. Versus sort of in the US, it's all up, there's a little bit more culturally accepted to hype up the winners. So yeah, talk us through how you consider the difference between self-confidence and arrogance and how can people not fall into this mistake.
Yeah, interesting term, this tall puppy syndrome. I just finished working with a client from Australia and he introduced me to this term. I didn't even know it. And he said, yes, it's an Australian thing. And I Googled it. This term, tall puppy, even comes from Australia. But apparently it's also a big thing in New Zealand. It's also a thing in the northern part of Europe. That people don't like showing off. Showing off, if you're this taller puppy, people get jealous and cut you off. And in the US, it's totally different. People celebrate their success. And if somebody's driving around with a nice car, people are like, wow, awesome. What are you doing for a living? This is great. And that's different in some other parts of the world. And that's just part of culture. And again, though, we need to understand where this is coming from. And it makes sense. I'll give you a little story with zebras. Why are zebras striped black and white? Like, doesn't make sense. You can instantly see them if they're running around Africa. Why would the evolution do that? But what actually scientists noticed, if zebras are in a group and a tiger is hunting them down, they have a very hard time catching a zebra because they cannot distinguish them. And the tiger needs to focus on one thing and then catching it. Even scientists had a hard time observing those zebras, so they actually put a red dot on one of the zebras, so whenever they go down and take some notes, they can see the same zebra again. But what always happened is that this zebra died because the lion could focus on it and killed it. But that shows us the tall puppy syndrome, because it is safe to be just as tall as the other puppies. You're not going to be attacked. Also, what I said, that once in a while, if you become super successful, if you have like $1 million business, it's normal that people are suing you once in a while. It's just like a thing on this level. If you're not on this level and like everybody else, nobody will sue you because nobody cares about you. And that's exactly what people are afraid of. What if I become too successful and people try to pull me down, try to hate me, try to generally simply pulling me down? And this is what happens, especially with people who have a low self-esteem. They hate it if others are successful, then they pull them down again. So that's a real thing. Yeah. And then this arrogance thing, I think this really simply comes down to this perceived value of myself and others. If I think others are extremely valuable and I'm not, then you're more insecure. You have a lower self-esteem. You're not confident. If you feel like you're the greatest, you're more of a narcissist. And you want to find the balance in seeing, hey, I am valuable, yes, but everybody else is valuable as well, and I can learn from some of them. And simply me maybe being more competent in a regard. For example, I am more competent in psychology, I guess, because I am a psychologist, doesn't make me more worthy. I'm not more valuable in a sense. We're still the same people, but I have some more abilities in this regard. But on the other hand, I'm, for example, bad at some other things. Still, I have similar value, and that's not being arrogant at all, to saying, hey, I'm good at that, but still we're on the same level. It's fine. I don't think I'm better than you and I don't need to prove it.
I think the thing that's quite interesting as well is even when you objectively have value, i.e., you're very good at being a psychologist, and all your clients love you, you can still experience something called imposter syndrome, where even though objectively you're doing really well, you don't feel it, and you feel that somebody is going to find out that you're actually faking it, even though you might not be. Can you maybe talk us through the psychology behind imposter syndrome and what we can do about it?
So again, I feel like I'm the compassion guy today. I always need to share that. First of all, imposter syndrome is normal if you are engaging in a new challenge. If you just get, for example, promoted and you're now in a leadership position, you've never done this before, and you're wondering, hey, am I good enough? Can I do this? I think that's reasonable, and it shows relative health even, because you haven't done this before, and now you're wondering, can I do this? Because I don't know, I haven't done it before. Makes sense, right? So of course you feel a little bit insecure, and then though over time you notice, oh, I notice I can do this, and then your confidence also, and your not maybe necessarily self-esteem, but confidence then raises me, like, yes, I can do that, and that should happen. But if you're stuck in that loop, as you said, like you're doing this already for years, like this example with me, like I'm a psychologist, I coach clients over years, and then after years I would still feel like I'm not good enough or I'm a fraud, and what if people at some point figure it out? Then that's something we can talk about, and that's probably connected to self-esteem. And again, always putting yourself lower than others. And then I would be curious to talk with this person, like, where is this coming from and why is he or she doing this? I guess there is also some positive side to that. I mean, if you always make yourself small and always say, oh, I'm not good enough, I cannot do this, at least nobody will attack you. Maybe that's one of the strategies that you're engaging in. But yeah, I think having an imposter syndrome on the long term, that's something with self-esteem where we should take a closer look.
All of this really boils down to, if you need some help working through some of this in terms of what are your values, what you care about, whether you are stuck feeling that you're not enough, even when you are objectively doing really well, there are always professionals that can help, and obviously Clearhead is one place in which you can basically make appointments with professionals to talk about those issues, and if your employer uses us as your EAP, it will be fully funded as well. So maybe just to finish us off, then please, Marco, share with us what's the one well-being practice that you do regularly to help you stay well.
I think it's self-compassion. I think that's a big thing, to simply be like, hey, I'm just a human. I'm not made to be perfect, and life would be boring if I'm not struggling anymore. If I would achieve it all and just walk around through life and nothing is actually exciting me or making me nervous, that would be boring. So I like to invite this challenge of doing that, and I would like to invite this challenge and enjoy the process of figuring it out. And I know it sounds generic again to, just enjoy the process. How shall I do this? But if you over and over remind yourself, hey, it's just a journey and that's what's exciting about life, slowly you also embody it and enjoy more and more the struggle as well.
Yeah, finding the beauty even in the things that are hard is something that will be a skill to develop. And it's definitely something that I've had to really think about in terms of, the challenges and the ups and downs of running the business. So much value and purpose that comes from making an impact to help more people get the support they need. But it is not without its own challenges to kind of disrupt the system, which really very much wants you to kind of stay within the current status quo. And I can also say, as someone who's actively been working on myself and thinking about my where I used to be in terms of feeling a lot of jealousy against other people's success. And then as I kind of just focused on just doing things that I cared about, surrounding myself with people who love me, whether it's my friends, my family, it's the people I get to work with, it just gives you such a sense of peace that you don't need to therefore then constantly validate that with external things or see how other people react to kind of bring yourself down.
That's it for today's episode. If you want to find out more about us, visit clearhead.org.nz. Love our content? Share it with a friend or leave us a comment on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. If you want to learn more about how Clearhead can support your workplace, or you have a burning mental health question that you'd like us to explore on the podcast, you can reach us at contact@clearhead.org.nz. Thank you so much again for listening, and catch you on the next one.